responsible for it. But I figure you've been with me all semester, you might as well hear at least one lecture where I out and out tell you what I think. And if that makes you nauseous, you should leave now. But here's the claim. If we accept my wide definition of comparative politics, okay, as the interdisciplinary study of how power works across time and space, then I want to argue that the Anthropocene is the single most important political context for the study of comparative politics today. Yeah, I know. I know what's going on with ISIS and ISIL and all that. I'm still making this argument. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. If you accept a definition of comparative politics as the study of how power is organized across time and space, then the Anthropocene is the single most important political context for the study of how power is at work in the world today. You all remember these graphs. Yeah, you do. I know you do, because I've been watching you study for this exam by retaking the quizzes. By the way, only 30 of you have done that. What's going on? There's like 200. Come on. You remember these graphs? The way that the human population has exponentially spiked since the Industrial Revolution, right? You remember that kind of flattish line that just went way haywire? That Poe's now a part of, my son, he's like adding to that count. Okay? From 350 million to 1 billion to 2 billion to 4 billion to 8 billion and counting. And you've seen the graph as well of our fuel consumption, right? The way that the Industrial Revolution itself might be defined by the burning of coal and oil deposits. The way we are putting carbon back into the air that has been trapped and sequestered underneath the ground for hundreds of millions of years in the form of carbon and oil. You remember that graph of fuel consumption also shooting way up. Think about this again in terms of geological time. Zoom back out with me 4.6 billion years, all right? The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. Humans have been around for 200,000 of those 4.6 billion years. The Industrial Revolution, when we humans began excavating and using fossil fuels, and thereby escaped the constraints of the biological ancient regime, that's only about 200 years old. Math question number 2. In geological time, the Industrial Revolution represents what % of the Earth's history? .0.00004% of the Earth's history. Come back to our UMass example. If UMass is the history of the Earth, and this stage is the period that humans have been around, half of the chair that you're sitting in is the Industrial Revolution. And yet, this Industrial Revolution, this tiny half chair, relative to the enormity of the entire campus, has brought with it widespread and unprecedented extinction of animals and plants, of entire ecosystems and marine systems, caused by human pollution, over-harvesting, climate change, habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, monoculture farming, nuclear fallout, river diversion, and ocean acidification. The Fukushima nuclear disaster that I assigned you a nice little New Yorker essay on for this class, that's just one of the more obvious examples of what we, as a human species, have been doing on a slow-moving scale for the last 200 years. Listen to what Paul Crutzen, the Nobel Prize-winning atmospheric chemist who popularized the term Anthropocene, has to say, quote, "We now live in human systems with natural ecosystems embedded inside of them. The long-held barriers between nature and culture are breaking down. It's no longer us against nature. Instead, it's we who decide what nature is and what it will be. We spread our human-made ecosystems, right, across the entire Earth. And so the dominant characteristic of the Earth's surface today is not so-called natural landscape, but human-initiated changes. We put huge quantities of synthetic chemicals and waste into the Earth's metabolism. And if there's any such thing as wilderness anymore, it's just because we've decided to leave it as wilderness. This thing called wildlife, they might as well be zoo pets. Because they're only there because they live in areas that we have consciously decided to create barriers around. There's nothing truly wild anymore. Moronga. And at the same time that all this is going on, there is a mass extinction of animal species. We are in an era marked by unprecedented intensification of our exploitation over other species of animals that are in no danger of going extinct because we are reproducing them in order to use them. Farm animals, okay, are the most illustrated example, with an estimated 50 billion land animals killed each year worldwide after living lives of immense, unprecedented confinement and suffering. If we were to take a straight utilitarian calculus based on a capacity to feel pain, all right, I'm not asking about intelligence. I'm not even asking about personality. I'm asking the question, can something feel pain? If it can, we're going to include it in our calculation. If we use a utilitarian calculus based on the capacity to feel pain, it would be possible to say, based on our treatment of farmed animals alone, that we are living in a period of more suffering than the world has ever known. Just think about that for a minute. It's also true that we're altering the nature of animal life itself through gene technology and synthetic biology. If we continue with our current levels of pollution and carbon emissions, it's possible that by the year 2050, just 35 years from now, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will exceed 500 parts per million, which is twice the level that existed before the Industrial Revolution. And that oceans will have become 150% more acidic. We're going to see temperature increases of 3 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit and massive die-offs of the marine ecosystems, including, perhaps most critically, coral reefs. Okay, have any of you ever seen a coral reef? It's possible that your children's children will only be able to look at them in history books, but they may no longer exist by the time you have grandchildren. Within 100 years, we could see a 52% extinction rate since the Industrial Revolution alone. In other words, let me put it this way. We're in the midst of a sixth mass extinction, one that we are responsible for as a species. As the scientist Anthony Pachirat says, look around you. Kill half of what you see. Or if you're feeling generous, just kill a quarter of what you see. That's what we could be talking about. So I want to argue that the most important context for thinking about how power works in the world today is this context of simultaneous human-initiated mass extinction of other life forms and human-initiated extensification of the intensification of control over other life forms. You do not have to be an animal or a plant lover to take this argument seriously. You could be the most narcissistic, anthropocentric, selfish jerk on the planet, and this issue should still be of interest to you. It's not inconceivable. Think back again to the Fukushima nuclear power disaster just a few years ago. That we humans are creating the conditions for our own extinction as a species. And so in the end, we are left with this question, okay? What kind of politics do we need in the age of the Anthropocene? Now, if this was a different kind of class, and if I was a different kind of professor, this is where I would call up the UMass marching band, and I would tell you to stop using plastic bags, plastic water bottles, to install energy-efficient light bulbs, to stop eating meat, which, by the way, meat consumption is one of the primary contributors to global warming, to compost your organic waste, to ride your bike to work instead of driving, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? I mean, these are all the things that we are being encouraged and told to do. And they're important. I'm not trying to make fun of them. But I'm not that kind of professor, and I have to tell you in all honesty that I'm extremely melancholic about our prospects. All the above things I mentioned are important, and they're good, and yes, you should do them, but they're not even close to being enough, okay? And when it comes down to it, I just don't think that our current politics, our current way of dividing every square inch of the earth into these entities called nation states, which claim a monopoly on the use of violence within their territories, this obsession that we have with wealth and with power over each other and over every life form on earth, and this sense of identity that we have based on national pride, I just don't think this kind of politics, this kind of comparative politics in the narrow sense of the word, is up to the task. And that's one of the reasons why I find the traditional study of comparative politics so constricting. And really, on my bad days, pretty enraging. You've all heard the expression, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. That's mostly what we do. We study different arrangements of chairs on the deck of a ship that's going down, while paying no attention to the ship itself. Or if you prefer a different kind of metaphor, our politics in the current moment consist of fighting over who gets which room in a house that is slowly but surely burning to the ground. There's this scene in the movie Virunga where the rebels are closing in on the national park. And Andre Bauma, the guerrilla caretaker, you remember him, right? Sweet guy. Really sweet guy. The man who is full of so much warmth and love for Maisha and Kaboko and all those other guerrillas. He's sitting outside oiling up his old AK-47. Remember this scene, right? It's a totally incongruous sight. This man who we've grown accustomed in the film to seeing with gorillas hanging off of him, laughing and being so cheerful. This man who calls himself both a mother and a father to the gorillas. It's incongruous to see him holding a gun in his hands. But the rebels are moving in, and the guerrillas must be defended. And as the bombs and the gunshots go off in the distance, Andres says in his beautiful, inimitable voice, many people left already. But for me, I feel obliged to stay with guerrillas here. You must justify why you are on this earth. Guerrillas justify why I am here. This is my life. So if it is about dying, I will die for the guerrillas. Or listen again to Rodrigue Katambo, the park ranger featured in Virunga, who in September of 2013 was captured and tortured for 17 days for stopping Soko from building a structure inside of the park. Katambo says these words as he looks out across the park in the film, quote, "I have accepted to give the best of myself so that wildlife can be safeguarded beyond all pressure, beyond the spirit of all greediness about money, beyond all things. All that could happen to me, I will accept it. I am not special. We cannot stand weak and say that Soko, go ahead. In the end, we will be judged if we just stand by as the park vanishes. But our wish is that this park lives forever." Andre and Rodrigue are, by any account, extraordinary human beings. But their words apply equally to all of us in this room. We too, each of us, must justify why we are on this earth. And we too must recognize that we will be judged. We will. By future generations for what we do with our lives in this moment. This has been an introductory Gen Ed course. my goal has not been to provide you with answers to these big questions. Rather, it has been to provoke you to begin to ask them, and to ask them with a sense of fierce urgency. Urgency. As you move out of this semester into your winter breaks and into the rest of your lives, you are all going to locate yourselves at different levels of Zoom. Some of you, I believe this, I do, because I've read your essays and they've impressed me. You will make your mark at the planetary level. I believe that. Some of you will make your contributions more locally. And still others of you will have an impact at the most zoomed-in level of all, touching other people's lives in an intimate, profound way. I want to say that no level of Zoom is particularly more important than another. In fact, I think one of the big disasters occurs with a sense of hubris and narcissism when we take a particular level of Zoom that we happen to be in as the most important one, ignoring all others. The challenge and the opportunity lies in learning to live and contribute at whatever level of Zoom we find ourselves living in without losing sight of the levels above and below us. And my one sort of deepest desire for you from this course is that you have gained some appreciation for what it means to zoom in and zoom out on particular problems, to ask about the bigger context of things, to the point of even challenging the very categories that problems appear to be giving themselves to you in. Should this zebra go in the mammal section or the striped animal section of the zoo? Why have a zoo at all? Ask about the concepts that people don't want you to question, because that's usually where the crux of the power dynamic lies. It has been a total pleasure and a complete honor to have spent this semester with you. I've learned a lot, and I hope that